Alrighty. Looks like we're recording, right, Alexa?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for spending your Friday afternoon with us. I'm Mark Holder. For those that don't know, the account manager here at TouchPoints Solution. It's definitely a pleasure to be your co-host today. We're honored to introduce you to Caroline Danda, Dr. Caroline Danda, our speaker. Dr. Danda is a clinical child psychologist with expertise in anxiety, depression, ADHD, and big emotions. She's not only a dedicated professional, but she's also a mother of three, which allows her to deeply empathize with the challenges that many of our families face. Dr. Danda is passionate about sharing practical strategies, and we're excited to have her collaborating with us on our education platform and using TouchPoints as a valuable tool to nurture calmness in our lives. Dr. Danda, I'll let you take it from here.
All right, fantastic. I think we're getting the screen show set up. So I am a child psychologist, and I work with a lot of kids that have both anxiety and ADHD. I feel like they seem to go hand in hand. And I also have three boys who also, I would say, are not necessarily neurotypical. So I have a lot of personal experience, which I think has informed my professional judgment quite a bit and added to my clinical practice. So I'm very excited to be here today. One of my favorite types of tools to use is TouchPoints. And I don't know, you guys can use maybe the reactions or something. How many of you already have a set of TouchPoints or familiar with the TouchPoints? Anyone? So, all right. We have a couple of people. And how many have kids that you would like to use the TouchPoints or use them too? So I think that's good to know. All right. Because that's really what we want to kind of be thinking about too, is that's part of our goal today, is really understanding the role of TouchPoints and getting kids to actually use TouchPoints. Because I don't know about you, but I know a lot about what would be helpful for my kids. Whether or not they actually take that advice or use the things I tell them is not as easy. It's easier said than done. So let's talk a little bit about kind of regulation and kind of ADHD. So I think we can go forward 2 slides. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this. You can go to the next one. So when I think about ADHD, I think about it more as an issue of regulating. And so it's not that they don't have attention, they don't have behavior, they don't have energy. Well, it looks like I get emotion twice, because emotions are very strong oftentimes in ADHD. But it's that their amount or level of attention, energy, behavior, emotion may not match the situation. And so it's an issue of regulating. And so really, and we're talking about also when we have big emotions, we're talking about that means our nervous system is also not regulated. So it's all about nervous system regulation. And so the idea of pairing and using TouchPoints as a tool to help with regulation is the definition of why they developed them is really to help that nervous system regulation. And so it makes a lot of sense why we can use those to support us, our brains, when for those that have ADHD. So the key is, though, how do we actually get our kids to use them? You can kind of go to the next slide, and actually the next slide. So we'll talk about, so really what I like to do is always like to front load, and I like to start with helping kids understand what's going on and why we might use a tool, whether that's with TouchPoints or whether that's with other things. I want them to understand what's behind it. And this may take place in a conversation over several types of days or several days, several times. So it's not necessarily like, here, let me show you this, let me do this. A lot of times, again, with kids with ADHD, I don't know if this is your experience, but it's been my experience. It works better if you plant seeds and give them time to process before saying, here, do this, right? How many can really relate to that? So what I really want to do is really think about, we talk to them about ADHD, and I say, hey, your brain's kind of like a race car, right? It's always zooming around, and a lot of times it goes faster, and sometimes it's really hard to slow down. And so we need to help those brakes. So it's got bicycle brakes, race car, brain. So we know that we need to help grow the brakes a little bit. And so then we'll talk about how we have all this energy that gets stored in us, gets stored in our body, gets stored in our brain. And so one of the things the touch points do, so I'll actually get out the touch points and I'll be like, these are called touch points. And this is not necessarily kind of the official line from TouchPoints. This is just kind of how I use them and introduce them. So I call them, a lot of times with the young kids, especially, I call them buzzies because they do vibrate and the kids kind of get a kick out of them being their buzzies. And so I'll show them and I say, you know, what this does is I always tell them green just means they're charged, which is always a really helpful thing to know. And then what happens is whenever you put them on the blue, and I usually will just start with the blue, I'll say, they're going to vibrate. Right. And what happens is the vibrations these vibrations, when they're on either side of your body, these are the things that are going to help tell your brain, I can chill out. It helps to balance the energy that you have so that you can do the things you want to do. And so that's really what it's all about, is helping to even out the energy to help you. So the blue is whenever you just need to relax and need to calm down. Yellow is when you need your brain to dial in and focus. And so I'll show them that. And then I will tell them, all right. And then you have the purple, and that's if your brain's kind of really feeling like it's going way, way too fast and it's about to crash. Then that's when we need to use the purple setting on that. And so I'll just kind of explain it and I'll let them hold on to it and I'll let them play with them a little bit. And sometimes too, I'll just let them hang out with it while we're just talking to kind of try it out. Because of course they want to feel it. They want to see it. They want to do all those kinds of things. So the most important thing is kind of giving them the why. And then as part of that, one of the really most important things too, you can go to the next slide, is one of the really important things about the touch points and any calming strategy for that matter is that it really should not be in some ways the sole goal of, I need to calm down, so I need to use them. Right? I call it set it and forget it technology. You're supposed to turn them on, you put them on. And a lot of times I like to have them kind of out of sight. And I just like them to do their work while I'm doing maybe other things, while I'm doing other strategies. I actually had a mom use them once and I introduced them. She's like, and they're not working. I was in the car and it was really stressful after the day and I was yelling at my kids and my kids were still loud in the car and I was thinking about how awful everything was and I was thinking about how they didn't work and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's not really how they work. It's not like this magic, like these are not Jedi, right? It's not like you will feel calm, right? It's more about, and so I think setting that expectation that you're just not going to feel all of a sudden you have this hallelujah moment and you're all calm, that it kind of happens over time and you're not supposed to watch it. Right? Don't watch it working, because there's nothing that will kill a chill skill faster than trying to see if it's working or not. Right? If you feel really anxious and really upset and you're trying to do something like breathe or use the touch points to calm down, and then you keep checking to see if you're calm, that actually gives more attention to your anxiety, to the dysregulation, which then signals your body that you still need it. It's kind of like if you have a bruise and you keep checking to see if it's better. Is it better yet? Is it better yet? Is it better? It's not going to work, right? And so they are kind of magic, but they're not totally magic, right? And so it's a set it and forget it. For that reason, one of the things that I really love with the kids, especially, is I always get the ones for sleep, right? Not necessarily because I need them to use them for sleep. I like it because they turn off after 30 minutes. Not that you can't wear them longer than 30 minutes, but then you still have more charge later if you need it. Putting them in these zipper points, a lot of times I like to put them on my ankles. That works really well because that way it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and they just do their job. Sometimes I like to just put them in my pockets. I'll have them put them in the socks. So I don't always like to have them put them on. You can get the wristbands. I don't always like it right on the wrist because sometimes it calls too much attention to it. And so that's why I really love, like, especially these on the ankles or in their pockets, or like if girls have like, I wear them in my, leggings, right? Where they have the side pockets or things like that. So, but the whole idea is you're just supposed to kind of have it and not really supposed to let it think about it that much. You're just supposed to let it do its work while you're even doing other things. And the idea of introduce it at a calm moment, again, maybe over time. And even better, what I would do, I can't remember if I say it. I don't think I say this quite yet. Even better is you might want to kind of use them yourself as the adult and kind of create a little bit of mystery about it, make it interesting, and let them even ask you about it if they see what you're doing. And you could say, yeah, you know, these are really cool. And then you can kind of explain it, how it works for you. And you're like, these are mine, but maybe I'll let you borrow them. You know, would you like to try? So in that way too, it's kind of something that they become interested, not something you're pushing on them. And I don't know about you, but I use these all the time. And so it's actually really good as parents to be doing it. And actions always speak louder than words. They're always going to do more about what you see. They're always going to follow more about what you do than what you say. So the other way, so that's kind of just background and introducing everything. The other part is chill skills and calming skills don't work very well if the only time we use them is whenever we're really upset, because our brains and bodies are simply not used to it. It's not our automatic go-to. And so what we want to do is we actually want to kind of create a routine so that we get used to it. And it also allows us to run at a lower level, because a lot of times when you have ADHD, or even if you're just kind of high strung a little bit, we run hot. We run a little bit high. And if you make touch points as part of your routine, then instead of running at like a 7 or 8, even if you're running at a 5 or 6, it helps us manage things a lot better. And so what we really want to do is we want to make it something that's just, I get it. I use these. This is what it is. I'm used to what it is. I'm familiar with it. It's not weird. And so we make it part of the routine. And then go ahead, next slide. The best time to use them a lot of time is times of transition, right? So a lot of times in the morning. So a lot of kids have trouble waking up in the morning. So sometimes actually giving them these or putting them on in the morning on yellow can help them get up and get moving and get going. Sometimes doing that along with doing some music or rubbing their back. So you're combining different strategies to help them kind of get their body moving and get their body flowing. And it can also be really good. I like to do it on the way to school sometimes. I like to do it on the way to school if I've had a stressful morning. But also for the kids, sometimes on the way to school, sometimes they're stressed, or maybe sometimes they need to focus. So sometimes you might put it in blue if they just need to kind of just get ready for the day and settle a little bit. And sometimes you might need to do yellow because they need to get woke up and they need to wake up. Because if your kids have ADHD and they're taking medication, we know that that medication doesn't kick in right away. So these are a helper that can kind of help that focus kind of kickstart a little bit. The other favorite place that go back, we're not done yet, sorry. The other favorite place I love to do it is on the way home from school and transition, or the way home from practice, or things like that. So that way, again, so sometimes having a set of these in the car is really cool. And it gives them something to do so they're not bugging their brother or sister or other carpool people. So when you do that, you know, I don't know about you, but even coming home from work, I like to wear them because it kind of is also that transition, and it settles my brain and body and allows me to be ready for the next thing. And I know a lot of kids have held it together all day. And so they really need a little bit of this time. So it could be in the car, but it also could be like during transition time. So maybe they're going to watch something on TV, probably a TV show, not an exciting video game type thing, but maybe they're going to play a game with you. But they could actually wear these after school to also prep themselves. The other piece would be is before you get started for a meal or before you do homework. Yellow is great for that because a lot of kids have trouble kind of sitting still during the meal. I also like before meals and other things, sometimes I make sure that they have a way to expend that energy first. So maybe we'll go, you know, run around the house or go up and down the stairs or give them something physical to do to expend energy before they actually have to sit and do something. So kind of meet your kids where they're at and use their energy and help them regulate even by that. So you could do that and do the touch points. And that kind of gives, again, an additive effect. And then lastly, I think we also talked about at sleep. This one doesn't actually say for sleep, but blue is really good before sleep. And I like to do it 30 minutes before bedtime. So maybe as you're doing a story or you're playing a game or you're just kind of getting ready for bed, they can just wear them around the house as they're getting ready. Some kids like to wear them in bed and some people don't. So sometimes in bed, sometimes you notice the vibrations a little bit more. And so some people don't like that as much. So which also these help kind of muffle the vibrations a little bit, which again can be really helpful for people who might be sensitive to the vibrations. So I would prefer to wear them around 30 minutes before, but some kids really like to do it actually in bed, or some adults like to use them in bed as well. So kind of, you have to figure out, it's trial and error to see what works best for you. Okay, now I think I'm ready. So our goal is not to throw it all out at them at once, right? Or sometimes we want to give all the information, like I just said, like, oh my gosh, I found this really great tool. Let me tell you all about it. And here's all the things, and here's what we're going to do. That'll be a little overwhelming, right? And so your goal is to try to find a time where you're going to introduce them and decide what your plan is. So it might be that you decide you're going to use them. So you also have the experience and you also know what it's like to use them. So you can also know what's better. If you know what the experience of using the touch points is, sometimes it can help you inform yourself about maybe what would work for your child. But start with one time period. Right. So maybe you decide, you know what, before bed, that's what we're going to do. We're for the next week or so, we're going to do and sometimes I'll say, hey, let's do an experiment. Let's just see if we wear these 30 minutes before bed, and we're just going to see how it works. Right. And so you make it no big deal. You also don't make it a thing that they have to do. It also gets their buy-in because they can say no. But you're like, let's do an experiment. Right. And all of a sudden it makes it a little bit more exciting. It might get their curiosity. They know that they're not going to have to be, now I have to do this forever and ever and ever. So you're like, let's just try it out and see. But like a week would give you a long enough time where you might be able to see what the effective. One night's probably not going to do it, right? You might try different locations. So maybe when I say locations, about wearing them. So they also do have the clips, right? So you can also sometimes clip into your waistband, or clip on a bra, or clip on a backpack, or some things like that. So just kind of figure out, maybe they like them on the ankles, maybe they like them on their hands, maybe they like them in the socks. Just kind of figure out what are the best locations, where do they like to use them, and try to pair with other calming activities, which we've kind of talked about throughout this. But like at bedtime, if you're reading a story, then that's a great time to use them at the same time. Or if you're kind of doing the back rub, the tuck in, you might even be doing like your prayers or your mantras, or kind of your good night gratitude, things like that. So or music, you can add music that has binaural beats that's kind of soothing with the brain waves too. So these are great as a tool, but they're more effective even if you can add other things along with them, right? And the idea is it's there for them to use, but you don't necessarily want to tell them to do it, because that's the surest way to get them to not do it, is say you have to do it. The other thing you could do is, if they need it, sometimes a little bit of an incentive, right? So maybe if you're trying to get them to wear them at bedtime, perhaps you might want to think about, well, I'll tell you what, if we do this experiment for the next week and you wear them for about 30 minutes throughout the day, or 30 minutes before bed, then what we can do is maybe on Saturday night, we'll have a slumber party, right? We'll all sleep in the family room, we'll watch TV and have a good time together. Or we'll have, some kind of fun activity, or something that they can earn for actually trying them out. So some kids need a little bit of that incentive outside of it, but you're also very clear, this is what you're doing. You're going to do it for this long. This is when you're going to do it, things like that. I think that's probably good on that. So I think, so I'm really curious about, so I know it sounds like some of you raised your hands that you have some experience with using some of the touch points. And I would love to hear some of your thoughts about, how do they work for you? How do they work for your child? What are some ideas? Because I've learned so much in my practice from the people I work with. And so I love sharing information, because I think we can all learn from each other, because we're not a one size fits all population. So can anybody offer some ideas about some ways that they've used touch points that have been helpful?
I do definitely want to say, when it comes to using touch points for sleep, I think, and we've definitely shared this experience, it's really helpful to first use them during the day, not jump right into using them for sleep at night. I think the experience of touch points is a lot like, drawing hot water in a bath. When you draw that hot water in a bath, you first get in, you're like, whoo, it's really hot, but after about 5 minutes, your body is able to adjust to that new sensory stimulus only until someone new gets in the bathtub, they share that same experience.
Right.
So I do find with sleep that it's always great to give yourself a little bit of time to be able to adjust. And then when you get into bed at night, it's already a familiar stimulation that eases that experience of being able to fall asleep and of course stay asleep as well. And I think it's really nice to have like a set nighttime routine. I really liked how you mentioned, building their use into a habit stack. So if you're an individual who likes to, read a book before bed, and then get right into bed, it's really nice to be able to have that touch points while you're reading, and then to be able to continue their use as you get into bed, and then just do that as it's a normal and everyday experience.
So
Right.
Prudence has her hand raised. Prudence, if you want to unmute, you can share.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Thank you. So I have a 14-year-old and he does not want to do medication. And so that's fine. He is very quick to say no to any tool.
Right.
However, however, one of the things that you kind of touched on with the touch points is because I also deal with anxiety as he does, and as well as ADHD. If we're having a moment, since he's not using them right now,
Right.
and we have 2 sets.
Okay.
So right now, if we have a moment that I think is going to be a stressful conversation or a stressful situation. So for example, this coming Monday, we have to go into the school and have a conversation with the guidance teacher. I actually put them on before those kind of conversations, or even conversations with him,
Right.
or if I, and I find that in itself, to touch on your point earlier, has really made a big difference for me and helping my regulation. So I don't freak out, because I'm thinking about these
Absolutely.
unrealistic expectations, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's what,
So
go ahead.
So I think I'm hoping that it will eventually rub off, but I hadn't thought about using them 30 minutes before bedtime. So I might kind of introduce that a little bit, although I do recognize that's not necessarily the best place to start, but it is one where he's kind of said he's having difficulty falling asleep. So I'm thinking maybe that might be another way to introduce them again.
Right. Absolutely. The best place to start is this place where your child is willing. So there's what's
enough.
ideal. And then there's kind of, again, meeting your child where they're at. And I love that you're modeling the use of them so he can see that you're using them. And you might even talk out loud a little bit. Okay, I can feel my heart rate racing a little bit. I can feel myself getting a little, I feel it in my body, right? I feel my anxiety in my body. I feel myself getting revved up, or I feel like I've got a little too much energy, kind of whatever you want to do to name it. And you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to throw my touch points on. And then you just do it. And then that's it. That's the entire conversation. But you naming some of that beforehand would be even better modeling for you to do. And then if I don't know if anyone saw, there was 2 previous webinars that I did, and that the second webinar was all about growing your calm as a parent. So Prudence, you are right on the mark in that they're going to either catch your distress or they're going to catch your calm. And so really the best place to start sometimes, even though we know this tool would be great for kids, is absolutely working on your own regulation and your own self-calming. And so they're going to start to catch that. You're going to model that. And then that is going to kind of help them. I do like for teenagers a lot about just experimenting, and really thinking about it as an experiment. Like, what do you got to lose? They're kind of, and sometimes I will go with it. I'll be like, sometimes I know it sounds a little bit woo woo or a little bit weird, but like, let's just try it out. So it's really trying to get their curiosity out of it, but also not making they can't have them sitting here like looking at them like while they're doing it. It definitely would be better to wear them while they're actually doing another activity, and maybe not before sleep. Maybe it is just during the day. Hey, why don't you just wear these while we're walking around doing something, so that it really is like something he can get used to. As Mark said, like initially you might be like, oh, I don't know if I like these vibrations. And then your body settles into it and is like, oh, I actually kind of like that. Maybe I do notice things.
I think for me, Prudence, I have a very similar situation, only my oldest is, I mean, he's 23 now. He's on the autism spectrum, but in high school refused meds. He didn't like how they felt, serious focus issues. I did not know about TouchPoints at the time, but I can tell you that when I first became aware of them, I tried them on myself. The first time I didn't like them because I was thinking about it too much, like everyone said. And so using it that second time, like turn them on and forget it. Best advice ever, Dr. Danda. Just turn them on and don't worry about it. But when I did, I may have done a first then with my son. A first use the TouchPoints for me, just humor me, and then you can have preferred activity. And he noticed a difference when he went out in the community, that it helped him stay a little more settled. He sat through a meeting instead of pacing. But my number one takeaway was my feeling after I wore them, because there's that residual effect as your brain wears new neural pathways. I stayed calmer before and after, which helped me kind of use all the coping techniques that I needed. But my other two children who have ADHD, but are not on the spectrum, use them before homework for focus, and they did have to get used to them. So I just had them like they were watching TV. I'm like, just do me a favor, you're watching TV, put these on your ankles. And I just had them there so they could get used to them. And then my daughter, and she ended up being valedictorian of her class, but she said to me after using them one night, she's like, is that what normal people's brains are like when they sit down to study? And I knew I had her. And I just talked to her last night. She's out of town playing field hockey, and she's like, I have my TouchPoints on. I'm trying to focus in the hotel room. So I would say if you can get them to use them a couple times, I think they want to feel calmer and they'll maybe be a little more open to it. So, but definitely keep going with your own. It will help you just in so many ways.
And just one quick other question, just what triggered there for me is, do you think it might be a good idea to at least try like while video gaming?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I think that it can be, because depending on what the video games are, video games can be super stimulating. And one of the challenges I think, one of the challenges I hear a lot is kids coming off of video games. It's very difficult. A lot of times when you're coming off of the video games, you're dysregulated because they're designed actually to dysregulate your brain. There are a lot of times the gaming, especially the first person games, first person FPS, first person shooter games, it's all about like fight, flight, or freeze, right? These are the exact kinds of neural pathways we don't want activated. But when you're playing those kinds of games and you need to win, or you need to get the, you know, the bump up or whatever, then that gets you stimulated. And so actually, I think during video games would be great, because he's not really thinking about it, and it might actually help him transition off of video games a little bit a little bit more nicely. That's a great point.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I would also say if they're resistant, again, I kind of go with it a little bit. And again, I'll be like, I know you don't think they're going to work. I know you think they're kind of stupid or whatever. I kind of just go with it a little bit. And I like Alexa's comment about like, just do me a favor. Let's just try it out. Humor me. Right. And so you don't try to completely go all in to say, no, you're wrong. This is actually why you need to use them. You don't want to necessarily challenge it with logic if that's not where they're at. But if you can kind of join them, and again, really, it's about being curious, trying something new, just seeing how it works. Right. You kind of have to be kind of like, it's no big deal to me if you use them or not. Right. But it's also about, I noticed that, you know, it seems like it's hard for you to focus, or I noticed that you get pretty anxious around these types of things. You know, these say they're supposed to help. I just wonder if it might. I wonder if it's worth trying. So I think continuing to throw those things out, even if they're resistant at the first time, it may take like a lot of different introductions before they're ready to use them. So don't give up. And then Alexa, will you go ahead and go to the next slide, just in case people want to, there's a feedback survey. I'm going to throw that out there because I think we're coming up on time here. There should be a feedback survey that comes out also in the email follow-up. but you can also use your phone right now for a QR code. We're always looking to improve our value when we do webinars, both myself and with TouchPoints. And so if you will do the feedback survey and fill that out for us, that'd be fantastic. I know that just being at the webinar today, you're going to get a chance to win a set of TouchPoints, and you'll get that information, I believe, in the email that's going to follow this. But if you fill out the survey, you will also be eligible. I'm giving away both. Oh, I can't go walk and get my books because they're in I'm wired up right now. But one of them is ADHD 2.0, which is one of my favorite ADHD books. It's by Ned Hallowell. And then also someone else will get a copy of a book that I co-wrote with Karen Montgomery, From Surviving to Vibing. And it's all about helping figure out, understand the world that we live in for teens, tweens, and even young adults, and then understand what do we do with all the feelings that we have and make sense of our world. So it's kind of it goes beyond self-help to surviving to vibing is meant to be how do I thrive within myself, but also within a community. So you'll be eligible to win one of those.
Yes, this is has been great. Does anyone have any last final questions? I know I'm not seeing anything in the chat, and I know we're a little bit over here, but I want to make sure everyone has a chance. If not, alrighty. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and of course, a heartfelt thank you to you, Dr. Danda, for sharing your valuable insights. Really love the way that you approach introducing touch points. I think it's definitely really important to understand the why and the how, and then that really helps to build the motivation. And of course, making it a fun experience. I think their use should be fun, and for parents as well to be using them alongside their kiddos. I think it's really important, especially as a caretaker, to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, because then you can lead with that care. Like Dr. Danda said, we will be announcing the winner of the set of touch points and the books in an email. So definitely stay tuned for that announcement. It will come shortly after we end right now. And if anyone missed any part of this webinar or have friends and family that couldn't join, don't worry, we'll definitely be posting it on YouTube, and that link will also be included in the email. I also want to say that we offer complimentary consultations. So for those that have been using TouchPoints or are considering the use of TouchPoints, we'd be happy to answer all your questions, offer tips, and ideas to get specific results you're looking for. Just really here to set you up for success. So yeah, just keep an eye on your inbox, and we look forward to staying connected with you guys in the future. Thank you, guys. Everyone have a great Friday.
Thank you.
All right, bye.